2016, I published the book, Autonomic Intelligence. I had a new vocabulary for talking about it that was grounded in pure science. I connected it to all the other forms of mind-body exercise and even pure exercise and talking about the health effects in terms of the autonomic nervous system. So it gives people a vocabulary for understanding the physiology of your own health. And then if you want to learn, you can go up to this higher level, which I call that's where you discover the pulsatile self through what I now call the reflective response, which is a pulsing sensation that begins in the lower abdomen and then rises up to the forehead with your breath and then down again. And it's significant in that it starts in the lower abdomen around the navel area or just below it, because when you are in utero, that's where your heart is. The actual heart is located in the lower abdomen, and then it moves up into the chest as the fetus grows and matures. So, Pulsatile came out, then I was sort of playing footsie with Silicon Valley for funding, and then COVID hit. And I pivoted away from the idea of contact devices and went with a couple of my students from the past had gotten into electrical engineering program at UVA, and they got involved in radar technology, radio frequency technology that you know, they were in the military, so they were looking at it from a military perspective, and they saw that it was being used for health and reading so-called vital signs, which includes the heart. So they were like, would you like to work with us? Because we can make this whole contact device stuff obsolete. And I was like, yeah. So I came up with this concept right here where you can, from about 10 feet away, pick up the reflective response as well as other biomarkers that could indicate whether or not you're sick. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, they were like, oh, this will be over in 2 weeks. And I said, no, it won't. I said, this is going to change the world. And we got into a big fight. And so I took my ball and left. And I went off with this idea and kind of pushed it for a while and then finally decided, you know what? What I have, the gizmo that I have right now, which is a software app, I call it the RfR app. It's sold in Google Play. You can put it on your phone. You can pick up a signal just fine using that to verify if you need verification that you are feeling what you think what I'm trying to say that you're feeling. And there's a whole bunch of data to support that it's a good thing, this particular marker. So what's the point? Um, the whole point would be to get investment to scale, to go global. And I just backed away from that and kind of, I'm not having backed away from it completely. But what really happened is that Phil introduced me to a very knowledgeable man in Singapore, Alex Lin, who's agreed to be on the podcast later. And Alex took me to school about how far the Chinese had really come in terms of Qigong from the time that I had been there. And this is something that I think that Phil suspected all along, and it gets us back to that original lecture that Xu gave, saying that humans are sensing background radiation from the Big Bang. In other words, there's this energy that you can't account for in physics other than to say it's background noise. So Alex introduced me to the concept of torsion energy, which is a property of matter that derives from electrons spinning and having their own spin, electrons spinning around nuclei, nuclei spinning, atoms making molecules that are just conglobulations of spinning, and it just spins also all the way up to a substance, to an object. And then when you make it move and make it living and give it, a physiology with a pumping heart, producing its own organic energy, you have a very complex spin system inhabiting this universe that's filled with spin energy that we can't measure because it's unidirectional. So Alex introduced me to that. And so now this is one of the things I presented to Lou's conference that Phil and I attended. I call it the Great Border Project Proposal, where, again, this is based on an experiment that's already been done to prove that a human body produces a torsion field that is distinguishable from all the torsion energy that's around a person. So I took it from a guy named Peng, I think was his name, the guy that came up with this experiment. And what he did was he just used it to show that you can generate a torsion field. And then what I came up with was like, what happens if you stick a person in the middle of this experiment? What differential would you see? And that is the future of where I think pulsatile is going, that the heart signal will end up being an indicator of, and I think eventually we can use AI to identify healthy, pathological, and all in between states of torsion fields that humans generate. And there may be ways to massage the torsion field to bring about health, which is essentially what Qigong does. If you've ever seen an external Qigong master go to work on someone, they have the person either sit or lie down, and the Qigong master will use their hands and project their energy into the person. You'll see that they'll start sculpting the person. And I learned this in the first two podcasts. My student John Dockin and I talked about how we did this when I first started, very naively, and we got sick from doing it. So there's definitely dragons out there. There be dragons, as the old medieval maps used to say. So all these new age healers that were out there doing things, claiming to be energetic workers, uh, should be put on notice. They don't really know what they're doing, and I think many of them have found to their detriment that they are damaging their own health. I think they all know that now. And actually, there have been books that have been published on this. They call it burnout. Energy workers was talk about being burned out and they have to quit, and they have all these therapies that they use. Well, the Chinese have known about this for thousands of years. So, and they've worked it out way better than we have. And that's why I think one of the reasons why we need to listen to them and talk to them. So ultimately, um, so this is the first when Pulsatile first came out. This is the logo I came up with, and it's a rather garish, kind of colorful design. And I've since now decided to go with the cool dark and gold logo. And actually, Claude recommended this. So I got a hat tip to Claude here on that. And I had Claude play with it and make it more like what I wanted. What it kind of gets at the original DVD design, which was black and gold. So I like that we've come full circle.